What are we discussing on today's Locked on Diamondbacks podcast? Geraldo Perdomo was signed to a new extension, discussing what he brings to Arizona. And is Jordan Lawlar's future now in question after Jerry's extension?
You are Locked on Diamondbacks, your daily Arizona Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked on Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day. You're listening to who? The always charismatic host of this podcast, Millard Thomas, multimedia journalist and graphic designer. So please go check out my website, millardthomas24.myportfolio.com. On there you can see all my latest work, from my packages to my articles to my photos and my graphic design. On today's episode, we are going to discuss Geraldo Perdomo, his new extension, and what he means to the Dbacks, what it means to Jordan Lawlar's future. Just now realized I spelled his name wrong in the rundown. And then what other players on the Dbacks roster could be next for an extension after seeing what Jerry just got. So a whole bunch I want to talk to you guys about today. Thank you for making Locked on Diamondbacks your first listen every day. I would not be able to do this podcast without you, my loyal listeners, sharing, subscribing, reviewing, doing all that so I could do this podcast for you. Thank you. It's free. It's available on all platforms, so please continue to tell your friends. One of those platforms is YouTube. Please hit subscribe to Locked on Diamondbacks on YouTube. Now let's get into the Locked on Diamondbacks podcast, and let's discuss Jerry Perdomo and that new extension with the Dbacks, because I was surprised when I saw the Jeff Passanbaum Dbacks extend Perdomo for a few more seasons at a number that I think was bigger than maybe some people expected. A 4-year, like $45 million extension that, if you look at the breakdown, I believe he makes $5 million in 2026. He will get $8 million in 2027, $11 million in 2028, then $13 million in 2029 with a $15 million option after that. So Jerry is getting himself paid, and he's one of those guys where he probably means more to the Dbacks than other franchises. He's one of those guys where you would have to watch Geraldo Perdomo games, Jerry games, to understand the value of him, the importance of Jerry, because he's one of those guys. You just look at the traditional numbers and you're probably not going to be blown away. You're probably not going to understand the impact of Jerry just by looking at the traditional. He only had 3 home runs in 98 games last year, only has 14 home runs in 401 career games total, a career 657 OPS. Like, you could look at the traditional numbers and question to yourself, if you're an outsider, of Dbacks fans, and be like, why would the Dbacks do that? Why are Dbacks fans happy if they just gave Geraldo Perdomo an extension that he's going to be making in the teens? He's going to be making real money a couple years down the line. So I'm sure outsiders are wondering, after looking at the baseball reference of Jerry, why us Dbacks fans are so happy. But it's just because they don't understand what he brings both tangibly and intangibly to Arizona. And that's what I'm here to educate the masses, the people outside of Arizona, because Dbacks fans already know the importance of Geraldo Perdomo. This is for the people outside of Arizona who don't know or fail to realize how important Perdomo is. Because the first reason, before we even get into the tangibles, it's the intangibles with Jerry. He is like the what's the word I'm looking for? He's like the unspoken captain of this D-backs team. Like, he's not the official leader, but the way people talk about Jerry, the way people talk about his character, the way people in the clubhouse like revolve around him, like Jerry's kind of like the sun in that locker room. And it's kind of crazy to think about, considering he's the number 9 hitter. He's not the MVP finalist like Ketel Marte. He's not the rookie of the year, future face of the franchise like Corbin Carroll. But Geraldo Perdomo, when he speaks, the clubhouse listens. With his attitude, with his energy, he's maybe the most likable guy on this D-backs team right now. And rule number 1, or the reason number 1 as to why Jerry got this extension, is because he's a great person, a great character. And a lot of times when you talk about sports and athletes, like, sometimes that stuff doesn't matter. But To the D-backs, they care about culture fit, and no one is a better culture guy than Perdomo. So that is the reason number one why he got the extension. But if you're actually going to go into tangible reasons related to baseball, the first one is the advanced defensive metrics last year really like Perdomo at shortstop. If you look at outs above average, not the best, but you go up and down fan graphs on like any other defensive metric, defensive run saved, he finished second. Again, this was in the National League, and he only played 98 games. So he finished second in defensive runs saved. He finished second in error runs above average. He finished second in ultimate zone rating. Like, you go across the board on advanced metrics on Fangraphs, and Perdomo is going to be near the top of the leaderboard. And his defense was really strong this past season, depending on the metric, depending on the website you looked at. But for the most part, defense very strong and seems to be continuing to improve in that area year after year. You look at the plate discipline for Perdomo, that's probably his biggest strength. His biggest calling card is the fact that he does not strike out. 96th percentile last year in chase rate, 98th percentile in whiff rate, and 90th percentile in strikeout rate. Meanwhile, he's also a guy who draws a ton of walks as well. So the fact that he does not chase anything, does not strike out ever, and draws a ton of walks makes him a super valuable player at the bottom of your lineup. When he's your number 9 guy, and you see him up at the plate, you know he has full command of that strike zone. And I see the team go the way Jerry goes. After he gets his first at bat, the rest of the team seems to lock in at the plate in the way that Geraldo Perdomo would. And so I think that kind of approach he has every time he's at the plate really bleeds into the rest of this team. Like I said, with his defense, if you look at the Baseball Reference WAR last year, which I think puts a greater emphasis on defense, Jerry had a higher B WAR than Corbin Carroll last year, despite playing 50 less games. And so despite the traditional numbers not being there, Baseball Reference WAR would tell you he's a more winning player, at least based off the 2024 season, than even a Corbin Carroll, which is crazy to think about. This is a guy whose offense and defense continues to go in the right direction year after year. Look at the way Jerry broke into major leagues. 2022, right? That first season, played 148 games. I did not think he was going to be a real Major League Baseball player. When you play a full season and you have a sub 200 average, a sub 600 OPS, I didn't know if he was ever able to turn it around and have like a real major league career, but he's gotten better in both offense and defense from his career. He's been super clutch, a career 285 average and 807 OPS with runners in scoring position. Like, that's his career numbers at runners in scoring position. And he's just the ultimate team player. He's been near the top of the leaderboard in sacrifice plays the last 3 seasons. It's like he does all the dirty work for the D-backs. He does the defense. He does the sacrifice hitting. He hits at the bottom of the lineup. Like, he does all the little things that go unnoticed that lead to the bigger picture of winning. Yes, the backside of Domo's deal is a pretty penny, but if he continues this trajectory, I think Perdomo will be more than worth the contract he just got by this D-backs front office. Now we'll discuss if Jordan Lawlar's future is now in question after that Geraldo Perdomo extension in segment number 2. Looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller longer. My favorite Wonderful Pistachios I actually have right here. Sorry to the audio listeners only. You're going to have to go to YouTube for this one, because right next to me, I got 3 of my favorite flavors here. And this is what is great about Wonderful Pistachios. Unsalted right here, no shell. Chili roasted, no shell. And then this one is roasted and salted with the shell. The great thing about Wonderful Pistachios is the variety. You could get salted, unsalted, with shell, no shell. Get a little kick to it if you wanted to. No matter what flavor you want, they have a variety and a profile that fits just for you. So please go get yourself some Wonderful Pistachios. Get snacking and get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. All right, back here on the Locked on Diamondbacks podcast, and now I want to discuss if Jordan Lawlar's future is now in question after the Perdomo extension, because seeing 4 for 45 for Perdomo, seeing the backside of that deal, knowing he's getting legit money, I had to make you question, like, is Jordan Lawlar now like up for grabs as a trade candidate, right? Are we thinking about going the other direction, or are we just content keeping him in the minor leagues for the next couple of seasons? Like, what is kind of the thought process now with the D-backs front office, Torey Lovello, when it comes to Jordan Lawlar? Because so far, the early indications are from Mike Hazen after the Domo extension is nothing is changing for Jordan Lawlar. And I would like to believe that to be true for the D-backs based off everything we've seen, because right now we know the D-backs emphasis when it comes to their philosophy is winning over development. And a guy like Perdomo is a winning right now player with his defense, with his plate discipline. He's seen major league pitching. Like that first season, Perdomo was terrible, but the next couple of seasons he's gotten better, right? Jordan Lawlar, if you play him for a full season right now, he might look like that first season Perdomo with the deer in the headlights look and not ready for major league action. And so the D-backs are content waiting on Jordan Lawlar. You got Perdomo, shortstop, who's ready right now. You got Eugenio Suarez at third base. The D-backs don't need to rush Jordan Lawlar, don't need to rush his development. It's about winning over development right now. And Jordan Lawlar is a guy who I would love to see mid-season make an impact. But is he going to make an impact right now, opening day for the D-backs? Probably not. D-backs can wait till mid-season. Hey, they can wait till next season for Jordan Lawlar to make his debut for Arizona and really make an impact. There is no rush, knowing you have a guy like Geraldo Perdomo right now waiting in the wings, or not waiting in the wings, currently on the active roster. And it's not like having Geraldo Perdomo blocks the path for Jordan Lawlar, because there's still a way for both of them to play, right? Even this upcoming season, you can put both of them on the left side of the infield. One guy could take third base. Perdomo's a switch hitter. Like, there's still ways for both of them to get in the lineup. But I can't lie. Seeing the Geraldo Perdomo extension, despite the fact that it doesn't block Jordan Lawlar's like path to the majors, you do have to think, like, does it make Lawlar a little bit more expendable if the D-backs are this committed to Jerry? I would like to think it does. Now, I'm not saying I don't think the D-backs are in a rush to trade Jordan Lawlar. They still want Lawlar to be on the active roster one day. They still want him to be the future of the left side of the infield. But if you are the D-backs, if you are Mike Hazen, if someone calls about Jordan Lawlar now, you probably are more likely to pick up that phone call and have a conversation. Before, you might have hung up right away, or you might have been asking for like the mountaintop, right, if you want to trade Jordan Lawlar. But now, knowing you have Perdomo locked up for the next few years, knowing how good he's been, again, this doesn't block Lawlar from making it to the major league level. Again, I don't think this changes the development plan that the D-backs have for Lawlar, but I do think it changes maybe the level of commitment that they previously thought that they had for Jordan. Yes, they still want him to be the shortstop or the third baseman of the future, but now you're like, you know what? With Perdomo in the building, if the right deal comes across the table, maybe we trade a Jordan Lawlar for a massive, massive package. Don't think that's going to happen for the D-backs. Still think they want to keep Lawlar first, but I do think the contract extension for Perdomo at least makes Lawlar slightly more expendable. Now, if Perdomo and Jordan Lawlar both stay with the D-backs long term, like, we could see this pairing play full time as soon as next season. Eugenio Suarez is an impending free agent at the end of the season. There is a world you enter 2026 and the left side of the infield full time is both Jordan Lawlar and Perdomo. And maybe we start laying the breadcrumbs out to that plan for next year. Maybe mid-season Lawlar gets that call up and starts playing a little bit more on the left side of the infield. Maybe we give Eugenio a few more DH options or a few more DH days and a couple more rest days mixed in between. Like, I think there's definitely potential to see that the two young studs on the left side of the infield for the D-backs. at some point this season, because I do think the dream scenario for the D-backs still is to have Perdomo and Lawlar on the left side of the infield. Like, ultimately, I think that's what the D-backs want. Two guys that are both young, talented, and relatively cheap. Why wouldn't the D-backs want that? Both guys are athletic. Both guys have defensive versatility. Jordan Lawlar probably has a much higher ceiling as an offensive player, but Perdomo is at least the guy that could do the dirty work for you. And because of Perdomo's defensive versatility, I do want to know if, like, ever down the line, if the D-backs kind of want to get crazy with the utility aspect of Perdomo, because can Perdomo like essentially turn into the D-backs version of like Ben Zobrist, Brock Holt, where maybe his primary position is like the left side or up the middle, playing second base, shortstop, third base. Like, maybe that is the primary position of Geraldo Perdomo, but maybe also get some time in the corner outfields. Maybe get some time at first base as well. Like, with the defensive versatility of Perdomo, maybe could even use Jordan Lawlar like this. Like, in terms of your lineup construction, if you have a guy like Domo that can maybe play all the positions in the infield and maybe even give a crack to him in the outfield, because I do think he has the ability and the defensive instincts to probably play a little corner outfield if he really needed to. I just want to make sure there's as many options as possible to getting both Domo and Jordan Lawlar in this lineup, because I think if the D-backs get both of these guys in the lineup one day, it means the development is going good for both these guys. It means the D-backs hit on Perdomo, a guy who was a little bit more diamond in the rough, a guy who was replacing Nick Ahmed, who we thought could just be Nick Ahmed 2.0 in terms of all offense, no defense. And now he seems to be getting better in both those areas. Plus, you draft Jordan Lawlar to be like an all-star level shortstop. If he's anywhere close to that left side of your infield with Domo and Lawlar, that could be locked up for like the next 7 to 10 years. And so we all want to see the Lawlar Domo left side of the infield eventually. But after this Domo extension, D-backs are not going to rush Jordan Lawlar. Again, it's about winning over development. And Lawlar is a guy who can even wait till next season to really give real playing time to if we wanted. Jordan Lawlar does not need to play right now. So for the D-backs, the extension does not affect Jordan Lawlar's path to the major league level. It's still there for him. The only thing I would say, maybe Jordan Lawlar is now a little bit more expendable when it comes to the trade market. Now we'll discuss some other Arizona Diamondbacks players that could also receive a Domo-like extension. We'll discuss that in segment number 3.
In sports, having a winning strategy is everything. It's how the best teams make it to the Super Bowl, the World Series, and the Olympics. The same goes for life. Having a strategy like life insurance from SelectQuote can protect your financial legacy and keep your family's future secure. SelectQuote makes it easy to find the perfect life insurance policy. As one of America's leading insurance brokers with nearly 40 years of experience, they've helped over 2 million customers find $700 billion in coverage since 1985. What sets SelectQuote apart is their personal touch. Unlike other brokers that offers one-size-fits-all policies, their licensed agents tailor coverage to fit your unique needs. If you're in good health, you might even qualify for same-day coverage up to $5 million, no medical exam required, and it's more affordable than you think. You can get up to $1 million in coverage for as little as $20 a month. Get the right life insurance for you for less at selectquote.com/lockedon. Go to selectquote.com/lockedon today to get started. That's selectquote.com/lockedon. SelectQuote, they shop, you save.
All right, back here in the Locked on Diamondbacks podcast, and let's discuss if there's any other D-backs players that could get that Geraldo Perdomo level extension, because I think there's a few guys currently on the roster that you can make an argument for that should get that early extension. Maybe they got a couple years of arbitration left, and it's like, you know what? They've shown us enough. Maybe it's smarter to lock them up with a little bit long term. The first guy I want to discuss is a pitcher, so I never know. With pitchers, it seems like they're less likely to get these deals unless they're like a Spencer Strider type. But the fact that he's already been in a World Series roster. He's entering year 3 as a potential full-time starter. Obviously, we got 7 starters entering next season, but only 26 years old, 6'4", 220 pounds. Brandon Pfaadt, I think, is a fantastic candidate to get an extension. Now, I think it would probably come after the season if he has a good year. If he has that breakout kind of season like we expect, Brandon Pfaadt, I think, could definitely be arbitration or extension eligible, not arbitration, because he's currently still going through pre-arbitration. So if he goes out there, has a fantastic year, was already on the World Series roster, Dbacks can say, let's do you right. Let's give you like a 6-7 year extension. Let's pay you till you're 32 years of age. Maybe not 6-7 years. Maybe it's like a 5-year extension, pays out 1 or 2 years of free agency. And we give you a good deal that's still, in terms of the value, maybe it's a great deal in terms of if Brandon Pfaadt ceiling keeps getting higher, if he's continuing, the numbers keep getting better, maybe the value of the deal ends up looking like a bargain potentially down the line for the D-backs. But it can also be a deal where it's like, yeah, maybe down the line it's a bargain, but for right now, considering you're going to make no money over the next few seasons, we'll still take care of you up front. So I think it could be a deal that helps out both sides. I think Brandon Pfaadt is definitely talented and good enough to warrant an extension early, but I do want to see the breakout season first from Brandon Pfaadt before we do the deal. Next up, you could also do the same thing with the little Gabriel Moreno, who is entering the first year of arbitration in 2026, 3 years of arbitration. So you could do the same thing, give him a 5-6 year deal. Gabriel Moreno is 25, 26. You could buy out 2 years of free agency if you want to for Moreno. This is a guy who's arguably the best defensive catcher in baseball. That's not going to change over the next few years. He's got one of the best pure hitting contact tools as well. I think that's going to change. If anything, he might get better as an offensive player. We've seen him in small sample sizes. When we put him at the top of the lineup, he can be very good for Arizona. We've seen him put together stretches of real excellence from an offensive standpoint. He just hasn't been able to sustain it for like a long stretch. And so there's still a lot of potential for Gabriel Moreno to get even better. And if the D-backs did deal with him right now, it could even end up being a major bargain down the line if his offense really, really starts to pop. So I love the idea of giving Gabriel Moreno an extension. And the next guy, let's say you called him up midseason and he looked fantastic and you really believed in his future. Jordan Lawlar is a guy you can give a future extension to, because the D-backs did this with Corbin Carroll. After seeing him in that small sample size, not too small, but that season prior to his rookie of the year season, right? He got called up by the D-backs, and in his small sample size of how many games was it? 32 games, 104 at bats. He looked good. 830 OPS. He had some pop, displayed some of that speed, and that was enough for the D-backs to give him that 8-year, $100 million extension that ended up being a great bargain, right? And a great value. And if Jordan Lawlar plays this season like around 40 or 50 games and looks really good in those 40 or 50 games, maybe the D-backs should think about extending Jordan Lawlar and just, paying him through his prime, maybe taking him through free agency and just give him that Corbin Carroll level contract. But I do need to see some real flashes from Jordan Lawlar before we do that. For a guy that still got a couple more years of pre-arbitration, I'm not giving anyone a massive contract extension until I see some real talent production out of you. But Jordan Lawlar, one good half season or one full good season, and he could definitely be in the conversation to get that Corbin Carroll level extension. Next guy, I think it's kind of interesting because he's still super cheap, and he's had 2 really good seasons so far. I just don't know if people really still believe in like the sustainability of him as a player. But Jake McCarthy is still someone who is going through arbitration the next 3 years, 27 years of age. Like, maybe you want to give Jake McCarthy a 4 for 45, like a Geraldo Perdomo extension, and just pay out a year or 2 of free agency and just take care of your guys. Like, that's the biggest thing with these players, is taking care of your guys and building goodwill for them, building goodwill with them, and also building goodwill with free agency around the league and other players. And it's like, you come to Arizona, they take care of you. They will pay you if you perform and are productive. And Jake McCarthy's a guy that has been that. And so it's cool to have a roster of guys who are on arbitration level deals who are outproducing that. But it also, if all those guys are in the locker room, like talking to each other, it's like, man, we're all putting up like starter to all-star level production and we're getting paid like nothing, I think it's a great look by the front office to pay guys what they are worth, even if you can just ride it out for a few seasons and just really take advantage of the system. I think it's a great look by the D-backs front office to take care of their guys. And Jake McCarthy potentially could be another one of them. If Jake McCarthy has another good season where he looks legit and he enters like year 2 of arbitration going to next offseason, maybe we should just give Jake McCarthy the extension. Now, the final guy I want to discuss is a guy who's a pending free agent, but a fan favorite of the D-backs who everyone wants to see back next season in Arizona, Zach Gallen. If the D-backs wanted to, this is not like the other guys where you're giving an extension early before maybe they even pop or have a breakout year. Zach Gallen is established. He's a guy who could be a number 1 starter in a rotation that goes to the World Series and potentially wins the World Series as the D-backs almost did in 2023. Gallen's a guy who's probably going to command $25 million a year potentially this upcoming offseason. Do the D-backs want to pay it? Maybe, maybe not. But if you start having conversations with him now and sign him early, you could probably get him on a better bargain than if you wait till free agency to sign him. And so Gallen is a stud. He's someone that we would all love to bring back. And so I implore Mike Hazen and the D-backs front office to give Zach Gallen an extension. Now, that's it for this edition of the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast. Come back tomorrow for more Diamondbacks news coverage and insight. And as always, stay safe, stay healthy. Deuces.